Sherry Palumbo, and I'm the lead customer account manager for the Western region here at SWK, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here today. Today we're going to be joined by Bruce Kern, our Senior Sage 100 consultant at SWK Technologies. He'll be walking you through the Business Insights Explorer and showing you how to turn your data into knowledge that you can act on by using powerful personalized sorting, grouping, filtering, and charting capabilities. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. All lines will be muted during the presentation. We will record and distribute the webinar to you a few days afterwards for your convenience. If you have any questions, please type it into the chat box at the bottom of your GoToWebinar sidebar, and then hit Send Question to Staff at any time during the webinar. Without further ado, let's get started with our presentation. Bruce, I'm turning everything over to you. Thank you.
Can anybody hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you, Bruce, and welcome back.
Gee whiz, sorry about that. All right, well, we'll see if we can keep rolling with the punches here. So Sherry, what's the last thing you heard, or did you hear anything?
We heard nothing. I heard nothing.
Oh.
I turned it over to you, and we got silence.
Nothing like live TV. Okay, so without further ado, I'll get rolling here. So welcome, everybody. Sorry for the audio difficulties. It is a live presentation. At least you know we're not. It's not a polished, pre-recorded type of thing. So without any further ado, Business Insights Explorer. We're going to just cover a couple quick parts of the Business Insights before we dive in the focus of today's lesson. So I'm just going to mention the dashboard here. I'm going to go ahead and run my dashboard. We're dealing with demo data. So this is all dated 5/31/2020. And I'm just showing you the dashboard here. These are pre-configured dashboard elements that you can assign to a user. So you pick and choose what elements show up in this dashboard. So there's things in here about inventory. There's things in here about purchasing. There's things in here about vendors, customers, cash flow predictions, receivables, and so on, all the way down to your financials. So you decide on a user by user basis which of these pre-built kind of widgets they get in their dashboard. There are drill downs to reports and so on. But it's totally pre-configured. There's no ability to really customize it other than you picking what's there. That's really all I'm going to say about the dashboard. The reporter, I always like to mention this also when we're talking about Business Insights. So the Business Insights Reporter, what that is, it's a front end of Crystal. So what Sage has done is they've pre-built some views, which are pre-linked tables that allows a user to run through this wizard. You click the Create New Report, you go through wizard, you pick and choose fields, you pick and choose sorting, you pick and choose grouping, and that sort of thing, and then you can produce your report. Here's one I just pre-built. I'm going to go ahead and hit Proceed just to show it. This one is a customer drop-off report. It's meant to show, you know, when there might be some activity for a customer, or there's a lack of activity for a customer, maybe have sales follow up with them. So the reason why you have the Business Insights Reporter there is that, you know, doing custom Crystal reports from scratch requires a degree of technical expertise that a lot of end users just don't have. So here, they've done a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You can pick and choose the fields and kind of go through a wizard, and it's fairly straightforward for an end user that doesn't have a lot of technical expertise. All right, that's all I'm going to say about the reporter. Now for the real star of today's show, we are going to talk about the Business Insights Explorer. And to do that, we're going to start by opening up a view and just talking about it here. So on the menu here, you have this Business Insights, and under the Explorer is all of the views for the entire system. And you can see there's quite a few of them there. If I go to, say, a different module like inventory, and I shrink up the menus here where I can see the Explorer, all the modules have, or most of them I should say, have this Explorer menu on the module also, and it's a shorter list of the views for Business Insights Explorer for just that module. So if you know where you want to go, you can go there. If you want to see everything, you can go up under the Business Insights. Okay, all right. So let's open up a view here. Let's just open up a view, and what we'll do is we'll just give a basic orientation here. We're going to start out with some really basic concepts orientation and basic stuff, and then we're going to, kind of move forward into some more interesting examples on how we might use this tool. All right, so here's your basic Business Insights Explorer screen. So we have sort of this main grid here. They call that the data view grid. You might hear me call it the primary grid or the upper grid, but its technical name is the data view grid. The idea with this is if you pick something over here, you'll see different records down below. So if I bring this up, as I change the selections up above, it changes what I'm seeing down below. So below is kind of the detail based on what I have picked there. So we have some toolbars here. We have a view toolbar, so we'll be seeing that. We can go back and forth. We'll play a little bit with that today, some tools there. We've got a data toolbar. This does things like sorting, filtering. It can do filters and refresh the data there. This is the Explore toolbar, this guy right here where it says standard. So just very similar to custom crystal forms and report, you're allowed to, it comes with a set of standard views. So what we're looking at here is the standard customer view. And then you're allowed to save those changes, make customizations, save changes, and much like you can do with crystal reports or forms, you can create a custom view. We'll be doing that today. Let's see here. Down here, let's see here, we have this little status bar. It says in the lower left corner here that we are in the customer view. This tells us what user we're logged in as, what company we're in. This 21 row box here refers to what's up in the data view grid. So it's telling me that upstairs here, I've got 21 records. And then the one row tells me, based on the record I actually have selected, how many records are in this secondary grid down here. So if I change this to, say, a different customer, I still have 21 rows up above, but I have 3 rows now under this RNS supply. That's just a little bit in terms of the overall look and feel. Now we're going to talk about this thing over here called the navigation pane, this little task pane here. So it has 3 components. Right now we're on the tasks tab. So the concept with the task tab is I can be on a record in here. I'll just pick one at random. And whatever record I'm on, I'm going to open up the Sage task, and it's going to possibly take me in to do something with that particular customer. So right now I've highlighted ABS. If I click customer maintenance, for example, it should open up customer maintenance. And here I am. So now I can kind of go back and forth between my data view tab and a data entry area. We'll be seeing how we might integrate that in toward the end, doing some custom office, some cash receipts, a little credit card processing example. All right, so the preview pane. So that's your task. If we change this to the preview pane, and right now it's on customer sales history by period, this is basically how I can change the information down below. So down here, customer sales history by period, that's why it says that, because that's the radio button I have. If I were to pick, say, history invoices here, I can click on different ones of these and see if they have history invoices. These guys don't. Let's try some open invoices. Nope, they don't have any of those either. Let's see here. But that's the concept, all right? So there's one. This one has some open invoices, so we can see what they've got there. So you can change that to see different things. Of course, different views will give you different choices there. And then let's see here. And then I think we have the Explorer here. So here we have just another setting. We can go into, there's, for example, the history invoices here. We can pull up the standard. See if we can get it to unfilter. And now we're looking at history invoices. Some of the records that we actually saw down below are now up above. So, and a lot of people don't play with this grid, this navigation pane. A lot of people like to knock that out of the way. And we'll probably do that. You can unpin it and pin it. I'm just going to hit the X to kind of knock it out of the way. And we'll play with some of those features as we kind of go through. Okay, some basics here. Let's see here. So drop-down filters. So all of these columns here have little data filters in them. So if we change the salesperson, for example, to Jim Kentley, it'll turn that column blue, and this keeps turning on the deleted items. Then it'll filter that column, and it'll turn blue there to indicate if there's a filter. And let me see if I can find a better view here. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and we're not going to save that. We're just going to do the open order view. Okay, so here's your stock open order view. And then again, if I were to change this, say to only open orders, it filters the data, it changes that little drop down blue, and it'll show the status in the little filter bar down here. So I can either just uncheck it and check it. And this thing here has a little short-term memory. So for the given login session you're in, even when you aren't filtering by that, it'll still remember that's there. So I can uncheck it. Now let's say I wanted to filter by the division, maybe I only wanted 02. Now I can see that I've got it filtered by status equals open and division equals 02. And I can hit the little drop down button there and pick either one of these. So it's building a little short-term memory there. Okay, moving fields around, basic stuff here, really simple. This little header bar across the top, all you got to do is pick any field you want, left click with your mouse, and simply drag it wherever you want. You can see the little green arrows. So if I want to move for whatever reason, the terms code next to the name, I just move it there and drop it with my mouse. Same thing with moving it to the right. Now let's say there's a field here you don't want. So here's a deposit field. So if I want to get rid of a field, there's a lot of ways to do this. All you have to do is highlight it with your mouse. You can drag it off the screen in any direction you nilly-willy want. I'm going to leave it there for a minute. Another way to remove a field is to go to this little button in the upper left corner, and that is the visible columns button. And you can click that, and you can see everything that's there. And you can just simply check something to put it in there, or uncheck it to take it away. So let's see here. If there's the deposit and I don't want it there, I can just uncheck it, and then you can see it took it right off the screen there. Or I can check it and add it back. So that's kind of a quick way. Another way to do that is to go to Edit, Column Settings, and you get into this screen here, and you can, that's pretty much that same list, and you can uncheck it from that list, same thing, all right? Same way to access that. So you can see there's 2 or 3 different ways to do everything in here, and you'll develop your own style. I like to do, this is the way I like to do it. I like to hover over this bar, this title bar with all these headers, right click with my mouse, and just go right to the column settings. Takes me right in there, and then if I want to get rid of something like the deposit, I just uncheck it, and I'm on my way. I like that way the best because, as you'll see as we go through, there's more options in that screen with that access that we're going to be able to use to do more features. All right. Now, I kind of mentioned it at the beginning. We're actually looking at line items. So up here are open orders. So if I change the order up here, I'm seeing different line items down for the different orders. Now, sometimes you want to see the stuff that's down below in the upper grid. You might want to do that because you want to export it to Excel. We'll be talking about exporting to Excel today. One way you can do that is to drill into preview, and I'll say no, and it'll put those line items up above now, and we'll talk about the exporting later, but you have to have it in the upper data view grid to export it. So here I'm going to use my little back button to just go back to where I was. Simple to do that. Okay, and then you might have seen me do this already, but you can resize this upper and lower grid depending on what you're doing. Just highlight it with your mouse, you get the little arrow bars moving up and down, and away you go. All right, another thing you can do here. Let's see. Let's say you wanted to sort by a column. All you got to do is just click on a column and it sorts by it. So let's see. Here's order total. If I open that up and I just click it, it sorts it. If I click it again, it sorts it the other way. It's really hard to see on the demo probably, but there's a little tiny triangle where I'm circling, and it's currently pointed down, meaning I'm going from the highest number to the lowest number. If I go from lowest to highest, it's pointing up, and that's how you can kind of tell, how it's sorted if you weren't sure by looking at it. All right. Now the filter builder. All right. So right now the filter's empty. What we're going to do is just show the filter builder. So there's this button down here. We already saw that if we did a filter up here, for example, if we selected division 2, it would show in the filter. So we'll uncheck it. But we can also do more complicated filters. So here in the filter builder, we'll click that button. It opens the filter builder. And here's our filter. And you can choose whether you're going to do an and or, different operands here. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to do a quick filter. And I'm going to say that the division is equal to, and if you click the drop down, it'll read the data. It's 02. You can also hand key that. So, and I'm going to put an order date in here. I'll do order date, and I'm going to say the order date has to be, and I can click the drop down, or I can just type it. And we're doing demo data here, so it's 2020. Hit apply, and I can close that. And here it is. Again, it tells me what I've got filtered. And then, of course, up here, it's got my data filtered with those 2 columns in blue, just like if I had done it by hand, one by one. Again, I can uncheck it, and then it's still back there once I've used it in my session. Okay, so that's some filtering. And a little bit about adding fields. Now we're going to talk about grouping a little bit. So here, we have a nice grid of information, but it's not really doing anything. It's almost like raw data, not necessarily useless raw data, but it's kind of raw. So we're going to change this back to all and make sure we're seeing everything. Okay. So this little gray pane up here that kind of goes across the top above those headers, that's called the grouping pane. And it says drag a column header here to group by that column. So it's very simple, very intuitive. All you got to do is basically do what it says and drag. So let's see here. We're going to group by salesperson, let's say. So if I drag the salesperson up there, what did that do? It added these groups. So now I can see Ginny's group and Harvey's a group and Jim's group and so on. I can come over here to this column and I can click the minus sign on any one of these to shrink it up, maybe to save space. Or I can also just right click in that area and go collapse all groups. Once I've done that, they're all condensed. I can manually, see what they are. So there's the 3 for Shelley. Or I can also just right click over here and we can expand all those groups. So you get some flexibility there. And we can also do subgroups. So one concept is, let's say we wanted it by salesperson, and then we wanted to sort it by some other way. Maybe we do by state or something here. Well, we'll just do it by division. And this may not be the best example, but you can do multiple groupings, and that's the point of that. Salespeople tend to be aligned with divisions anyway, so that's not necessarily the greatest example, but I'll just get rid of that right there. And another thing you should know if you're going to group by something is you don't have to have that salesperson in your primary grid or your data view grid once you've grouped by it. So it may be that I don't really need this here anymore. So I could drag that off the screen. I still have my groupings, but now I freed up some more space on my grid. Just a concept. Okay, so, and we'll be seeing this a little bit more as we go through, but one of the reasons you may want to group your data is you may want some subtotals. So here I've got a nice order total column, and I've got it grouped by salesperson. Wouldn't it be nice if I could total that? So that's what these two buttons are here under this toolbar here. So that says summary footer, and that one says group summary footer. So if I hit the group summary footer, what happens is some boxes light up underneath each group. So Ginny's our first group. So I can hover over that empty box there, right click with my mouse, and these are the preconceived, functions that you get with Business Insights Explorer. So this one, it would make sense to do a sum. So now I have that underneath each rep. So if I collapse these groups again, and I click this button here, which is the summary footer, that'll open up the same type of boxes, only at the grand total kind of summary level. So here's my order total. I can click sum, and now I know that the total of all the orders is 58,470, and I could expand these as I desire to see what each sales rep part of that total was. Okay, so that's a little bit on grouping. Now let's say that we like that and we wanted to save this. This is kind of the end of some of my basic stuff. And then we're going to get into doing more formulas. So whatever I did to this grid, if I wanted to save this, what I've been doing is working under the standard setting, which is stock setting. So my recommendation is that you always leave the standard setting stock. And that if you're going to save any changes that you do, you save them as your own setting. So if I wanted to save this, what I could do here is I could click the save button, or I can come over here to say file, save setting as, and now I'm going to give it a new name. So for today's date, for today, I'm just going to give it today's date, 03/19/19. So notice I have options. I can make this a public setting or private setting. And what's the difference? So a private setting is only available to the user log on that created it, and a public setting is available to all users. Another concept with settings is that settings are global across all companies. So if you are have multiple companies in your Sage 100 install, as many people do, it means you'll be able to access this setting from whatever company that you have. If you change company codes and you go into Business Insights Explorer and you pull it up, it's going to pull from the company that you're currently logged into. So that's part of why they give you the AO3 down here in my example. That's part of why it tells you what company you're in. So be careful if you're in one company using BIE and then you go back to your main Sage, change the company to a different one, and then go back to your same BIE screen without relaunching it. Make sure you know what company the data you're looking for is for. Okay, so, and then probably the other thing worth mentioning here is Sage has protected itself. They don't let you delete the standard setting. So those are there. All right, we're going to close this guy, and we're going to move on to another example. Let's get rid of that. All right, so we're going to do a little bit on formulas and color coding. Something I love a lot is the color coding. So we're going to pull up a view here. Let's see, we'll do the customer view. And we're going to go ahead and save this right off the bat. So it's just like doing anything else. If you're working in Excel, Crystal Report, Sage Intelligence, whatever it is, if you know you're going to make some changes, you don't want to work with the standard view, one strategy is to go ahead and just save it as your own setting right off the bat. That way you've protected the standard view and you can get off and running, making your changes. Don't forget to save often. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go File, Save Setting As, and I'm going to give it today's date. I'm going to leave it as public. And there it is. And now I can see I can go back and forth. In fact, there's another one down here, but we're just going to stay in the 3/19/19 for now. All right. So what we're going to do is we're looking at this and we're going to talk loosely about a collection scenario. So we see that we have our current balance here and we have our aging category here. So in this system, the aging categories are set up as 30, 60, 90, and 120 past due. So that's kind of interesting. And let's say that what I want to do is I want to know what my total past due is. So what I'm going to do is a formula that tells me that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my column settings and I'm going to add a formula. So I prefer to right click on the header to go to column settings, and I'm going to do a calculated formula. There's a button here, and you're in the calculated, field expression builder, for lack of a better term, and I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to call it, what do I want this to call it? So this is what it's going to show up as on my header. Past due amount. Here's where I build my formula. We'll see that we can use a number of different things in formulas today. I'm going to open up the tables. My first formula is going to be pulling out of the AR customer. So here is my aging categories, and we already stated that these were 30, 60, 90, 120 past due. So I'm just going to pick that one, and we're just going to add these together. So I'm just clicking them and clicking the plus button on my keyboard, and there we go. I've added 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. Pretty simple. If I hit OK there, shows up in my list. It's automatically selected. And we are going to do we're going to call this a currency field. And we're going to turn on the column level formatter. And this is a key concept here in Sage Intelligence. Once you select a format for a value, you can open up the Use Column Level Formatter. And depending on the format you've selected, you're going to get a box is going to open up down below. So currency is what I picked. I get the currency box opened up. And this says, how do I want to format these values? So the first one here says, what happens is if it's a positive number, what's the format going to be? Currently, it's set with a $, a comma after the 1,000, and then a .00 for 2 decimals. The next one, then there's a colon, and it says bracket. That's how it's going to display a negative number. And then there's another colon, and it says, how is it going to display a 0? So what I can do is I can come in here, and I can say insert color tag, and I'm in the positive part of that format. So I can pick a color. So I'm just going to pick red, meaning if the past due amount is a positive number, it's going to display in red. I'm going to choose not to format the rest of my things. I only really care if it's red. Okay, and then I'm going to hit OK. And it always adds new fields to the far right. So if I scroll over to the right, there's my past due amount. I'm going to drag that over here with my mouse. And I'm just going to put that right in front of my aging categories. Okay, so there it is. Now I might want to save my setting if I think that's good work I've done. Optional, it's up to you. Now what I'm going to do is just show you how to rename one of these fields. So aging 1 is what it's named in the database. I'm just going to right click it, go to column settings. And if I want to come up with a better name for aging 1, maybe I want to call it 30 days. All I do, go into that space, type it. I can do anything I want to do with any of the other formatting, but if that's all I want to do, that's all I got to do. Now it says 30 days. Okay. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to play with a Boolean formula. Ooh, big word, Boolean. What does Boolean really mean? It's really, it's really just logic for things that are like yes, no, true, false. It's kind of yes, no, true, false type of logic. So what Boolean logic says is, you look at something, you evaluate the data, and you evaluate it as a yes, no. So by definition, numeric values in Boolean logic are considered false, and other values are considered true. If you're looking at string data, the letter T is in tango or the letter Y is in Yankee are considered the true values. So how would, that's all great. How would I use this in Sage? So let's just say we wanted a formula. We wanted a way to see if an account was past due. We wanted a past due flag, like a yes, no. They're either past due or they're not. So let's see here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into my column settings. I'm going to create a new calculated field. I'm going to call it past due. Whoops, I hit my cap lock. past due, yes, no. Take out my hack there. Now, I already have the past due amount calculated. So I don't actually have to come up with a new formula. All I got to do is use the same formula I already have. I just have to apply Boolean logic to it. So here's my past due amount formula that I already created in just the prior example. And I'm going to pop it in there, and it's the same exact formula I had last time. There's no difference. All right. What is going to be different is how I'm going to format it this time. So here I've got my format. And one of my formats I can do is Boolean. So I'm going to pick Boolean, and I'm going to open up the column level formatter. And I can see down here I've got some different choices. I want the yes, no in this example because I want to know if it's past due or not. So I'm going to leave it as that, and I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to scroll over there, and I'm going to bring that over here. And there it is. I could even add a little more power to that. So I'm going to come back here. What if I wanted to color code it? So here's my yes. If it's past due, I'm going to put the cursor in front of that, and I'm going to insert the color tag red. If it is not past due, meaning no, I'm going to put my cursor at the end of the no. I'm going to make that one green. Let's see if it does it. I meant to put it behind it, but it may not matter. All right, so there we go. And sure enough, now I have a yes, no flag, and it's red if it is. And you can see from the numbers, it seems to be working pretty good. Okay. All right, we're going to do something with named values. So let's see here. Let's look at talk about the customer status field. So let's see here. I don't think we have it. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about named values because this is something that Sage does a lot. So I don't believe we have it. So we're going to add a field called customer status. So we've seen how to pick things off the list. We've even done a couple of formulas. Now we're going to add a field that's not in the list. So we're going to click add. And these are the pre-linked tables, if you will, in Sage 100 that are attached or married to this view that we're working with, this customer view. So for those of you who do Crystal reports, this is the same concept. Crystal reports, you know, you have tables, they're linked together, and then you're able to pull data from multiple tables. The difference is in BIE, part of the trade-off you get for the user interface being easy to manipulate and not really having to be super technical is you don't get to add more tables. So this is fixed. It is what you get. You get what you have. So I can't add, you know, CI item or some other table here. This is what I have. All right, so just thought I'd mention that along the way. So customer status here, let's find that and find out what the problem is that we're going to solve. So there's customer status. If I hit OK and I move across to the right here, you can see that there's values in here, codes, but I don't necessarily know what those codes mean. Sage makes extensive uses of this type of logic all throughout the database. There's salesperson codes that represent salespeople, item codes that represent items, and so on. So what we're going to do is figure out how do we add some more meaning to that if it's not entirely clear or we want to make it more clear. So what I'm going to do is go back to the column settings. I'm going to go to the customer status, and I'm going to open it up. We're going to make this a named value. So there's named value, and we're going to use a column level formatter now. So all we're doing is kind of editing the stock field that we brought in. And then down here, it's going to let us decide to do whatever we want to do. So in real life, the I in the database for Sage for a customer status means inactive. That's its actual definition. So if I type an I here, I can type what I want the I to be called in my screen. It doesn't have to match what Sage calls it. So I could use the word inactive, or I could use something else. So I'm just going to call it, I'll do something a little funner, bad customer. Bad customers are inactive. They didn't hire me for my typing. And then we're going to tell it an A is a, we'll call it an active customer. All right, that is what the A actually stands for. And then the other value we saw over there was a T for temporary. That's what it is in real life. And we'll just call them, we'll go ahead and let them be temporary. So really all I've done is define those codes. And now I have a status that actually means something. I can group on that. I can do any other stuff I want to do. So that's what a named value does. Okay. Now this is kind of a fun one, this next one. Let's see here. We'll go ahead and save that just for grins. And we're going to open up a different one here. All right, so customer open invoices view. So here's a view, customer open invoices view. What we're going to do is we're going to try to do a seasonality example. We're trying to get a look at seasonality. How many transactions did we have in a given month? How many dollars were sold in a given month, so that we can hopefully see, you know, where our seasonality is and confirm our instincts about the way we run our business. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to create a formula for month of year invoiced. So we'll go to column settings here, and we'll just do a calculated field. Month of year invoiced, and then we have functions available in Business Insights Explorer. So here's a list of functions, and you know, you can do all kinds of stuff with these functions. You'll have to play around with them. I'm just going to come down, kind of scroll, so you can kind of see what some of them are, even though we're going kind of fast. And I'm just going to pick the one that I want, which is called month. So here's my function. It's inserted up here, and then what I have to do to finish it is it needs a date expression. It needs to know something to tell it the date. So my job is to tell it what date to use. So I'm going to come up here to the tables, and we're in the open invoice view, so we have the AR open invoice, you know, available. And I'm going to come down here, and that should have an invoice date in it. So I'm going to find the invoice date, and there it is, and it punches it into my little function. And I'm going to hit OK, and there it is. For now, I'm just going to hit OK and see what it did. And there it is. There's my month of year invoiced. So if I bring that over here to my invoice date and kind of put them next to each other, now I can kind of see, you know, it looks like it's working. The 5s are in May, the 1s are in January, and so on. All right, so far so good. Now I'm going to want the original sale amount. I want the total dollars here. So let's see here. We're going to just come over here to the column settings, and we're just going to create a formula. So we're going to do a calculated. We're going to call it original sale $sign. All right, and we're going to find out where our stuff is. So we're going to go to the AR open invoice, and we're going to look for what we think we need to add up the original sale amount. And it's the non-taxable amount plus these are alphabetical in here, the taxable amount, and it actually includes the freight, which, you know, you can either include or not include, but I'm going to include it. There's the freight, and I'm going to hit OK. And I may want to make that a currency. I can use the column level formatter if I want and just leave it like that. And then here's my original sale. And let's see here. If I put that over here kind of next to the balance, you know, we can kind of see some different information there. Okay, so that's good. That's good. Now we're going to do one more formula, and then we're going to make some cool charts, hopefully. So this is what I call the simplest formula in the world, and you don't always need to do it. But let's say I group these by month of year invoiced. You know, there's a grouping there. So I might be able to get some things out of this if I open these guys up. I could potentially get a count that way. That would tell me that one has 8 invoices and this one has the next group. If I open it up, it may have more. It has 14, but I also probably want the dollars, so that may not be ideal. So if I was using that to sum, I need a way to add these things up. So I may or may not be able to apply the count on something else like the date column. But I'm also going to just show you how to add your own count column. So right here, if I do column settings and I do a calculated field and I call it count, and I just type the number 1 in there, that's all you got to do. And I might want to make it a numeric field so that I can take the decimals out. So here is my column level formatter again. In this case, instead of doing a color code, what I want to do is actually take out my decimals. So here's what happens if I don't do that. Did I save that? I must not have saved it. Okay, I'm just going to tell it you are numeric. And I'm going to go ahead and take those decimals out. If I didn't do that, the decimals would be there, and I don't really need them in this example. All right, so there's my count, and right there I can just do a sum or a count to count those. So there's 8 there. Now I've got both a count and my dollar amounts, so that's going to be helpful. Okay, now what we're going to do is we've got it grouped by the month of the year invoiced, and we've already added our original sale amount, and we already have the count based on each group or each month. Now what we're going to want to do is just add the summary. So there's the sum, there's the total, in other words, and here is we'll do the count of these. So there's 103 total, 8 in January, some more in these different months, and they've got a lot of activity, so it's kind of hard to see, which, you know, but we can see there's data there. Now what we're going to do is try to chart this. So here we've been playing around on the data view grid. This is our first chance to visit the chart tab. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to give it a name. And I'm just going to call it seasonality, or whatever you want. You get different types of charts that you can do. I'm going to leave mine as a bar chart. Data points per page. Since I'm charting 12 months a year, I'm going to make that a 12. I'm going to leave it a 3D chart, and now I'm going to tell it what it is I want to chart. So let's say I want to start with the count. How many invoices, how many transactions am I actually doing per month? So there's the element. I'm going to want to group this by what? The month of year invoiced. And I'm going to sort it by month of year invoiced. And this is demo data, it only goes through May, but you can see that I could fairly easily chart that, and I could see that, boy, our season gets really busy in May. I could also add another element to that. So if I want to overlay these two things, I can add the original sale amount and do the same thing. Now, it doesn't look real good in this case because the dollars are so big relative to the small numbers of transactions. So it's having a hard time fitting them on the same chart. Or you could just change it to in this case, I switched it to dollars. So you can chart multiple elements, or you can focus on single elements. And that's a way of doing that. Okay, now exporting. Everybody always likes to do exporting. So let's just export this here. So we've got a lot of stuff in here. Exporting basically is this. So you can do File, Export Options, and the first thing you want to observe is whether or not you have selected records only, and that checkbox there means that's it's selected records only. If that's not checked, it means it's going to export everything in your upper grid. So I'm going to uncheck that. It closes it. So if you want to go back and verify, you have to go back. It's off. And then in this case, it's going to give me everything out of the main grid. So I'm going to choose Microsoft Excel, and it will automatically export everything in the upper grid, except we'll notice when it gets into Excel, it's only the raw data. It does not include your groupings, your totals, or anything else. So we'll give it a second to open Excel here. And there it goes. The one good thing about this compared to Crystal Reports in this particular area is a lot of Crystal Reports are heavily formatted. And because this is in a grid, it always exports the data really cleanly into Excel. You do lose your groupings though. So notice there's no summaries or anything else. It's just the raw data. All right, we're not going to save that. Now, if you only wanted to export certain records, you come over here to the left side where you see these little boxes, and you just hold down your control key on your keyboard, and you start marking whatever ones. You see it's putting a little mark on those. You mark them like that. Then you do File, Export Options. Make sure it's selected records only. File, Export Options. Then I can drop it into Excel, and it'll give me just those records. Okay, much shorter list. I think there was about 5 of those. All right, so that's how you export data to Excel. And then we've got 2 more things to kind of show you to kind of wrap up. We're going to show you kind of a how to tie this together scenario, and then we're going to do a mail merge. All right, so what we're going to do is under the customer view, there is a collections dashboard, and this is just something that I had kind of made for somebody. So here's a collections dashboard. It's not necessarily finished, but it's got some of the stuff that we did, like a total balance there. It's got that. It's got the current. It's got their aging. It's got a credit limit variance. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the navigation pane here, and we're going to go over to the tasks. So if I'm a collections person, you know, I might be looking at this and saying, oh, this customer has a past due amount. That's a pretty big number. I'm going to call them. So, you know, and their phone number's in here somewhere. And I may not have added it, but you can have a phone number in here. Oh, there it is right there. There's the phone number. You can have an email. All that good stuff can be in there. It's just a question of adding it. And let's say what we're going to do is we're going to say we called this customer and they agreed to make a payment over the phone. So we have Sage 100 with credit card processing through Paya or any number of other integrations. So we called them up and we said, hey, Baypro, can you make a payment over the phone? They agreed. So what we did is we went into cash receipts here. We started a batch of cash receipts right over the phone here. We processed his card, got his card over the phone, processed it, got an authorization code, charged it against his invoice. Thank you very much, Baypro. Then we're going to go right over here to customer maintenance. Here it opens up Baypro for us. We've added a little collections tab here, tab number 9. So with custom office, we added the tab and we created these fields out of thin air that we decided we wanted to use to track our collections activity. So we created the last call date. We created this drop-down list of callers, and we created a status field here. And then we got a place to type notes. So we come in here, we update our collection note, hit accept, close it, and then right back here in Business Insights Explorer, we've actually added some of our collection fields right to the grid here. So if I wanted to refresh it, I would just hit the refresh button. The data would be refreshed in there. So you can add your custom office fields to these BIE view grids based on the table that they're in. So this one uses a customer table, therefore the customer UDFs are available. And then they would rinse and repeat and move on to the next collection activity. So that's kind of a great way to use custom office with credit card, you know, bring the whole thing together, use it as a tool to solve a problem. All right. And since we're running out of time, I'm going to cut out the printing part because it's not too glamorous. I'm going to do one other thing that very people don't know about, which is a mail merge. So let's see here. To do that, what we're going to do is we're going to do an example where we're just going to use the customer view to do a mail merge. All right, so I'm going to change this back to the standard view. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to do a mail merge to send out a mailer to customers about a big sale that we're having. And we want to send that to anyone who purchased anything in the last year who has an active status that's not currently on hold. So what we're going to do is stock view here, standard. We see that there's an on hold column. We already have that, so that's good. That's a good starting point. What we do need is a customer status. So we're going to add that. We saw that one earlier. So we'll go column settings. I'm going to click add. We know that that lives under the customer table because it's customer status. There's the customer status. So we'll add that. Hit OK. We're going to move that guy over here to where we want it. I'm going to drop it there temporarily, scroll the rest of the way. Now there's our customer status. And we want somebody who purchased something in the last year. So a little harder to get at maybe in some cases, depending on what tables we have, but here's what we have. Let's see what we can find. Okay, there's some dates here. There's date of last activity. We're going to go with that and say, okay, scroll over to the right, start moving it over here where we want it. And you can kind of keep going. I find it's easier to drop it and scroll the rest of the way over and then get it to where I want it versus trying to get it to force scroll once it runs out of space. So now what we're going to do is maybe what we could do is they're not on hold, so that's good. They have to be active, so maybe I'll flag active. And the date of their last activity has to be within the last year. It's demo data, so it all meets the criteria, but I could do a range or a filter if I wanted to filter that in real life. So here's my list essentially that I filtered out that I want. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a mail merge. So we're going to fire up our Microsoft Word here. And we're going to do, oh, they just updated Microsoft today. How about that? So this is real live TV because this hasn't actually even been tested with the new Microsoft. Hey, what's new Microsoft? All right, so we're going to just do a quick, try to see if we can come up with a quick mail merge. So we're just going to do a file. Come on, Microsoft. File, save as, and we're just going to give this a name right off the bat. So, and we're just going to browse and save it on the desktop. And we're just going to call it Big Sale. Okay, so there's, and then I'm going to close it. So all I did is I created a blank Word doc. I called it what I wanted it, and I put it right on my desktop here. Now I'm going to come back into here, and we're going to either select records, or I can select them all. So I'm going to go File, Export Options, and I'm going to turn off that because I want everything here. And let's see here. And we're just going to kind of go for it. So File, Export Options, we're going to do a Microsoft Office merge, and we're going to do a Word merge. And we're going to pick the big sale. And this is just saying it's going to drop a CSV file, and that's where it's going to extract the data out of the system, and it's going to put it into a CSV file where it can feed the Word merge. And there is my big sale. So I'm going to say insert whoops, insert a picture. There's our logo, and then I will type a letter here. And here's your mailings, and let's see, you got insert merge field, so dear name, and then let's see if we have address fields in here. So address 1, 2, 3, whoops, we didn't want those, I want the address, whoops. I'll clean it up on the other side. So I'm just doing that for speed. We'll come over here and get rid of these ones we don't want. Okay. So city, comma, state, comma, zip code. Now, of course, you'd have dates in here. I'm just kind of throwing this out there kind of quick and dirty. And we'll give them the account number. Let's see here. All right. All right, and then we're just going to do the finish and merge, and we're going to edit the individual documents, and we'll say all, meaning bring in all of the customers. And it did it. It brought in everything here. You know, we might put some polish on the letter itself. That was kind of a quick and dirty example, but at this point, we'd be able to print those out. Some other things that I've seen people use that for are sending customers a paperless office letter saying, hey, we could send your invoices via paperless office. We could send your invoices via email and fill this form out if you would like that done. Sometimes people will create a flag in the customers to identify those in BIE to generate the letter. And I have another customer who was actually using this to try to help them with recall scenarios, what customers purchased what items in what time frames that might have been tied to a recall. Just some ideas that you could do with a mail merge. And with that, I think we're just about over our hour, and that's pretty much what I had to show you today. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Sherry.
Thank you, Bruce. That was a lot of great information packed into that presentation. I really appreciate all of your time on this. I am looking at our question pane, and I'm not seeing any questions, so I am going to take a moment to let someone raise their hand or enter a question into their question pane, if interested. As we're waiting for that, I will update you to say if you do have a question that you think of after the webinar has ended, please feel free to reach out to your customer account manager here at SWK. If you are not sure of who your customer account manager is, you can email our CAM team at CAMTEAM, that's C-A-M for customer account manager, C-A-M-T-E-A-M, all one word, at swktech.com. And I am still not seeing any questions that's come up. Give it one more second here before we stop. Again, I'm not seeing anything, so I will conclude our webinar today. Thank you very much for attending. We appreciate your time. Bruce, thank you for presenting, and everyone have a very great day. Thank you all.